The Love and Leary podcast is where nursing leadership, innovation, and real talk come together. Hosted by nurse leaders Marion Leary
and Rebecca Love.
The show dives into the issues that matter most to today's nursing community.
Each episode features candid conversations, expert insights, and bold perspectives on healthcare, leadership, advocacy, and the future of nursing. Whether you're a clinical nurse, nurse leader, or another healthcare changemaker, Love and Leary offers thoughtful dialogue and practical takeaways to inform, inspire, and empower nurses at every stage of our careers.
All right, Rebecca, how's it going?
Good to see you, Marion. Well, look, I'm so excited about our segment today.
Yeah, I know. So I'm coming off of a incredible long weekend at the 2025 Healing Politics Campaign School. And so I did a live video recording interviewing some of my cohort, which was incredible, and they're all mind-blowing individuals. But I thought since you went through the first cohort.
Yep, back in 2023, yep.
Yeah, back in 2023. And our good friend, Dr. Danielle McCamey, went through it last year. I thought the three of us could have a conversation about our experiences and, you know, why we wanted to do it, why nurses should run for office, and yeah, just chit chat about it. So I'm going to bring in Danielle. Hello, Danielle.
Hey, y'all.
I'm glad you're with us.
Yes, good to be here with you all.
How you doing?
I'm doing great. Live in DC. I'm at a conference, so excuse the hotel room and the super formal dress.
Oh, you're looking nice as always.
Thank you.
And we're glad to hear that you're down in DC because I think this just sets the stage perfectly. What are you doing in DC? What kind of conference are you down there for?
It's the Graduate Nursing Student Academy for AACN.
Nice.
It's their annual conference. I'll be speaking on leveraging transformational leadership for today's times.
For today's times.
About advocacy and civic engagement in this talk. So,
boy, they're lucky to have you.
Absolutely.
So, we wanted to talk about healing politics and nurses getting involved in civic engagement and potentially running for office. And so, I think let's go in order, right? So, Rebecca, you were at the first Healing Politics back in 2023. Set the stage for us. What was it like back then? It was only a couple years ago, but times, I think, are a little bit different now than they were then. What was the energy in the room? Why were folks who were there interested in learning more? What was your experience?
Yeah, I think it was, this was a new cutting edge program that I think a lot of people were wondering, should nurses be more engaged civically? 2023, coming out of the pandemic, wasn't that long after that time. We saw that policy was really impacting the way that governing was happening across healthcare, but also a greater impact. And those first nurses that showed up, there was a segment, I think most of us were unaware that there were so many nurses who actually were in office, right? This is not something we ever were taught in school. This is not something we talked about broadly. In fact, it almost feels like politics and nursing are supposed to have two separate entities. So those who first showed up, I think showed up sort of cautiously because those that were in attendance, and this is interesting about healing politics, is it brings both Republicans, Democrats, and independents together. And showing up in that room, I think a lot of people were just trying to figure out, what does this mean? What does it look like? Who is actually in politics? And is this a risk I should personally take? And I think a lot of us saw it as a risk, right? Not as an opportunity, but as a risk. So I'd be curious to hear, when we looked at that, I think by the end of the program, most of us saw it as a huge opportunity, almost a calling that one should be doing it. But I think that there was the inherent in the start that this was more risky as opposed to beneficial in a potential impact of what it could do for yourself personally. But by the end of that program, there was a lot more hope and opportunity that, and actually there's a responsibility of nurses to be out there doing this. So what did you guys experience?
Well, it's so funny. And I'll let you go in a second, but because I just went through it last weekend, my range of emotions over the course of the 3 days was like, Friday afternoon, I was like, oh my God, there's no possible way I could ever run for office. Then on Saturday, I was like, I could totally do this. I'd be an incredible candidate. I want to run for office. And then on Sunday, I was like, well, I don't know. We'll see. It was like all over the map.
Oh my gosh. I would have to agree with both you all. When I decided to do healing politics, I ended up making the decision after going to a fundraiser event for Also Brooks. And she was telling such a compelling story. I was like hanging on to her every word. And I saw myself in her shoes. I was like, oh my gosh, like I need to like run for office. So I'm like applying, posting up my fundraiser. My family's like, so now you want to run for office? I'm like, I don't know, but I'm incredibly inspired and intrigued. And I saw myself in Also Brooks that this could be like a possibility for me. And so for me, I didn't look at it as like a risk. It was like, how can I learn the game secrets to see if this is something that I want to do? And Marion, I would have to agree with you. Like the weekend is so jam packed, but the energy it's indescribable because it's an energy that it's like-minded people that want to do something. And having that like energy of movers and shakers, and people are like we want to get stuff done. It wasn't people trying to pontificate or people running down their resumes. It was like, okay, where are you from? What do you do? What are you passionate about? And so we were just kind of getting to like that nitty gritty of understanding each other and wanting to just find out ways that we can leverage our networks, our experiences, our knowledge to potentially get involved in politics in some way, shape, or form. And I'm an introvert, so the weekend was overwhelming for me, but I felt like I
wouldn't think of you as an introvert.
Oh my
gosh, I am INFJ, guys. I went through the range of emotions too, and like by the end of it, I was like, I don't think that I could be in the spotlight like that, but it inspired me to want to spark other people's flames to get this opportunity to be in the room for campaign school, to get this exposure.
Yeah, I think it was really interesting. One of the things that it really highlighted for me is that people may want nurses to run for office, but there are so many people who want to help nurses run for office and get elected.
Yes.
And, I think it came up repeatedly over the weekend. Nurses aren't great about asking for help.
Correct.
And so acknowledging that if you're going to do something like this, it's going to take a group of individuals to help you get there. And so being okay with asking for help and knowing that you have this community behind you who wants to see you succeed, who wants to see more nurses in elected office. So that was really, I think, helpful to a lot of folks there.
And Marion, to your point, I think that first step, and I love how healing politics sets this up. They're like, okay, your first step in your first assignment is throwing up your fundraising platform and start asking for money. And I was feeling super conscientious of asking for money. And it was like within 24 hours, I had like raised everything that I needed. And then people's comments were like, oh my gosh, we've been waiting for, this for you to come to the realization you should run for office. I'm like, come on.
Yeah, it's very reaffirming, right? Like,
yes.
Yeah, I had a very similar experience. I think if you're not comfortable doing it, I've done fundraising my whole life. I've worked for nonprofits. I didn't mind asking people for money, but like it's not as difficult, I think, as you think it is. People really, they see you if you're out there doing the work, and they want to help you, and they want you as the person out there doing the work to succeed. So yeah, I think it's a lot easier than scary.
Yes.
It is. It's just making that first threshold, right? And then it's different asking somebody to raise for a cause than to ask to raise for you, right? And so getting that switch of mindset, and to your point, Marion, it's people that aren't ever going to run or aren't going to do the work. They want to pay and support for people that are. And I think that's a fundamental shift, and things as nurses that we need to think about. Like, if we want change to happen, if we're not going to go out and drive the change, where are we putting our dollars and resources to support those that are? And that, to me, is one of the fundamental takeaways from Healing Politics, is the idea that we as nurses should not have been involved in those stages, that our conversations really should never have been at the national levels along those lines, that policy and positioning and where you are doesn't necessarily matter as a nurse. But the truth is, Healing Politics says all of that does. And the only way we're going to end in the name, the title of Healing Politics, is how are we going to bring nurses together to have those difficult conversations where we have differing opinions, put ourselves in the same room so that we can advance the profession. And I think we learn a lot about things that we never learned in school when we go to events like this that show us how we need to be effective as a profession.
Yeah, it was really interesting and sort of mind-opening for me to be in a room. And so they had Senator Gail Adcock from North Carolina and Senator Kristen Roars from North Dakota. Different sides of the aisle, but they are like the best of buds. And they put on this incredible, at times, comedy show of knowledge for us about how to work across the aisle. How, as Senator Adcock says, she doesn't work across the aisle, she works in the aisle. Like, you have to be able to work with people from all walks of life to be able to get anything done. And, she comes at it from that holistic viewpoint of nurses. We take care of everyone. Yes. Well, it's the same in the political arena. You have to work with and collaborate with everyone. And I can at times be very partisan, and so this was really it was helpful to me to see that and be exposed to that.
I think so. And, I think even in this point in time where we're talking about in history, right, the reality is that partisan is feeling very strong. And we start to, the more partisan you more feel like you're antagonistic with those who have been longtime friends or colleagues. Yep. Nursing, the numbers show that we're equally split between the two dominant parties, right? It's almost 50-50 with a small group that is sort of independent. And the reality is many of us have friends who see things very differently than us. And what we don't want to have happen is for us to pull back and not engage with them in meaningful conversations. And for me, that is something that's been very hard, right? How do we not see the same with regards to it when I genuinely like the people sitting on the other side of the aisle? And that the process of Healing Politics, through the process that you had and what we learned, is how you have those conversations with people you may not fundamentally align with on candidates, but you can still fundamentally align on issues. And I think that is some of the power that we need as nurses, is learning that way of caring at the bedside for people that you would never probably, be with in real life in any other kind of circumstance, teaches you that you have the effectiveness of actually transcending issues in ways that most others cannot and never will be. Nurses naturally have had to walk into uncomfortable situations with things that they disagree with violently and still deliver to an outcome for the best interest of somebody other than themselves. And that, to me, is what should fundamentally be happening in politics every day.
Totally agree.
And that was the epiphany for me during Healing Politics, that, the nursing skills is absolutely transferable to being a politician. I was like, you mean like me negotiating with these surgeons and intensivists to, convince them that this is the best course of action for my patient, and then they actually finally come to it as their own idea is transferable to navigating the political arenas? Got it.
Everything we do, all of our education, it is all transferable skills. I mean, Rebecca and I are pushing the Nursing is STEM coalition, right? Like, the science that goes into the work that we do, the public health perspective we need, the policy that nurses are engaged with, the education, communication, collaboration, teamwork, empathy, and innovation. Like, all of these skills are nursing skills, and they absolutely need to be in the political arena as well. And so, I think that was another takeaway for a lot of people. Like, we are ready right now to run for office and be politicians because of the background that we have as highly educated, highly skilled nurses.
And one thing that I took away from largely from those conversations also was nothing happens fast, right?
Yes.
10 years is fast in Congress. And I think for a lot of us as nurses, we give up because we think that change is never going to happen because nobody set the expectations that for meaningful change to happen is that it's going to take a long time and you got to come at it a long time. And I think people look at the three of us and they assume that our journeys got us to this place quickly, right? But if I'm looking back, Marion and I have now known each other 10 years. Danielle, you've been in our life now for 4 years, right? Like the truth is time and change comes with repeated effort and scalability. And that is the truth about Congress as well. Now, we may say things are changing faster now than we've ever seen them change for right or for wrong. The reality, though, is this country and the way that we've even built our profession, it is an iteration of hard work every day to keep going at. And I think that was one of the powerful things that I learned too, is that we may get discouraged because things aren't happening when we want them to, but that the arc of justice and of democracy and of change takes time, but eventually it curves in that direction of where we want it to go if we stay with it. And to me, that was a frame of reference that if I hadn't gone to healing politics, I may have burned out faster at a place that I would not have otherwise understood that or committed myself to causes that I'm like, look, guys, it's not going to change in a year. If we're not willing to commit 4, 5, 10 years to this, the likelihood that we're going to change it is probably nil. And that's helped me frame conversations with nurses and others to be like, don't get discouraged.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, in all of the work we do, we've seen that. I definitely have seen that in the innovation space, and in the education space, right? For God's sakes, took me like 10 years to get to my education done. I want to talk about the urgency of getting more nurses in elected office. So there was a study out by Columbia University School of Nursing 2 years ago now, almost 2 years ago now, that of the over 7,000 elected state legislators nationally, only 72 were nurses. And that was down from 97 nurses in 2013. So in a 10-year span, we decreased the number of nurses who held elected office in the state legislature. Like, we're going the wrong way. And, I'm glad that Healing Politics is pushing us to think differently about how we can get nurses engaged in these spaces. But I'm curious what you all think. Like, some nurses like us are really civically engaged and motivated to be involved, and some aren't. What do you think the characteristics are of nurses who want to get involved, and how do we get more nurses ready to say, I want to jump in?
I don't know if there's any specific characteristics. I know for me, I had my 1 or 2 policy courses in my education. It was the one for me, seeing the representation of the possibility of, being in politics. And then just more recently, just the spark of seeing how things are changing and wanting to leverage my skills, knowledge, network, and expertise to do something. So I think reframing the mindset around it, that it doesn't have to ascribe to certain view of someone, but if there's something that I always say that burns your biscuits or keeps you up at night that needs to change, and pulling policy levers is the major way to kind of actuate that change, then start navigating the space to start finding alignment where you can learn how to amplify and elevate your voice. So for me, it's like, start with the cause that can spark your interest, and you just kind of go down the rabbit hole of finding your way.
Yeah, Danielle, you've started the Nurses Shift Change movement, which is trying to get more nurses to take action in those ones. And I think you make a really valid point that it's not something that's taught, even though I do think certain individuals grow up in households where they are taught that they have a social and civic duty to actually be involved and do more. I think that is the question that we need to figure out on how to solve. But for many people, it's just that a moment in time that actually starts a movement that triggers action, right? That something happens to you that feel personally affronted by or need it to change. And that's what needs to happen. And I think there's either you grew up in a household that said, look, you have a civic duty. I always think to myself back to the Kennedys, right? They were often taught that they had a civic duty to represent and take action, where other people, that wasn't at the forefront of those conversations. So it's usually a movement, something happened, they saw something was wrong and they jumped in. But I think what we need to say is, to your point, you don't need a certain pedigree or a degree or somebody to give you permission. In fact, the most meaningful change often comes from people who have none of that behind them, who just are seeing that there is injustice in the world, and injustice anywhere is injustice everywhere, and they take it upon themselves to drive that change. And Marion, let's be honest, you constantly are out there taking voice on issues, amplifying them. Why do you do what you do? And also, I think people are going to wonder why also, if you've already taken such a public stance on so many issues, why not run for office? And I think these are the things that all three of us went to this thinking maybe we would run for office. And at this time, we just said, it's not the right time. It's not never, but it's just not yet. But Marion.
So, one of the people I met at the Healing Politics Campaign School, Dr. Andrea Cazales, is actually running for city council in Durham. And as I was talking with her for the live podcast interviews I did there, she said something that really struck me. Not all nurses can take the time to go out and be civically engaged. They have to work their job. They have to take care of their families. They have all of these other responsibilities. But if you have the privilege to be able to be civically engaged, then you should absolutely, as a nurse, go out and do that, because that's part of our responsibility. And, I feel that way. I felt that way since I was like a wee youngin'. Like, I have this privilege to be able to spend my time fighting for the causes that I feel are just. Not everybody has that voice or privilege or time or platform to be able to do those things. And so, I feel a responsibility to my community to do that. And I will always continue to do that. In terms of running for office, I am still in that Sunday post-healing politics. Well, I think so. There are reasons. I definitely would like to consider it. There are things that would hold me back, work-life balance. Financially, I am the only income in my family. Like, I have responsibilities that I don't know I could meet if I were to run for, Philadelphia City Council or some other elected office. So I have to take that into consideration. So we'll see. The great thing about the Healing Politics Campaign School was that on Sunday, they made us write down really think about and write down what our goals were before we left, and the timeline and what it will take to get there. And I have a much clearer idea now of, if I were to run for office, what that would look like and when I would need to start doing certain things. What I want to do right now is just work on campaigns. I want to help other nurses get elected, like Dr. Cazales, and also like Nancy Mannion, who was also in our Healing Politics cohort and is running for U.S. Congress in Pennsylvania. So, there are nurses running currently who are in office, who are getting up for re-election, and who are running for new offices. So there's a lot of ways to engage and help other nurses get elected also.
Well, as I think we're sort of coming down to the end of this, Harris, I think, what are the top things that you would want to tell the nurses that are listening today about just their thoughts and things like this? Danielle, we'll start with you.
I would just say, like I mentioned, find causes that you're passionate about and start mapping out opportunities to get involved and connect with people to see where you can amplify your voice, your network, your coins in supporting people, or really getting some clarity in pursuing something like politics.
Marion?
Yeah, I'll just say, do it. Like, it will be scary, but if you at all have an inkling, a desire to do more to help your community, I'll be honest. When I started floating this idea, I talked to a lot of people who have run for office, who've held office, who've run campaigns. They all told me not to do it. They all said, I am more effective doing the advocacy work that I do now than I could ever be holding elected office. And I went into the Healing Politics campaign school thinking, I'm not doing this. Like, I've talked to all these people and they've all told me not to do it. My mind was so changed by talking with and interacting with all the senators who were there, telling us all how effective it is and how great it feels to write up policy, work collaboratively, and push for a bill or a policy or whatever that is going to then change the lives for their constituents for the better. And it's stuff you could never get done unless you are in an elected office. So I would say we already have the skills. We just need to be brave enough to take that step.
And I think, you know what, the older that I get, the more I realize we're going to live 1,000 lifetimes in this one life, and we're never going back. So it's just a moment of time that for a period of time, we're going to be a professor, we're going to be working corporate, we're going to be working volunteer, we're going to be with a job, we're going to be out of a job, we're going to have kids, we're going to be post having kids. All of the things that define us for moments are just moments. So don't think that just because of who you are today doesn't mean that you can't do this in the future. And I think that weird things happen in life that push moments forward, that you think you're on one track and suddenly a door or a window opens or an inkling or a whisper happens. And what I would say to anybody listening is don't ignore those whispers. Because that is the sign, in my opinion, of the universe that it has bigger plans from you. And when we continue to ignore that, we miss the signs of change that we're meant to do, and try to follow what you can. So thanks to everybody who's tuning in. Danielle, we are so thrilled to know you and all the work you're doing. We're going to be championing on Nurses Shift Change. We're excited to be participating and supporting. And to everybody else, Healing Politics, congratulations to making it to your 3rd year. We now know that it sets up a path. Every year just gets better.
Thanks for listening to the Love and Leary podcast. We hope this conversation sparked new ideas, challenged your thinking, and reminded you of the power nurses have to lead change. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it. You can find more episodes and join the conversation wherever you do your podcast listening.